What's going on, Rather Nation? I'm Jake Seymour, and I'm joined with Reid Miller for the first reaction to the Celtics game on the GRD podcast. So this is a new segment that we're going to do where we come on and we talk about the game from last night. Last night, the Celtics lost to the Milwaukee Bucks in the first seeding game, 112 to 119. And a lot of big takeaways from that game. A lot of people are freaking out about it. But I know, Reid, you're not really freaking out about it. You're kind of taking it kind of easy. What are your thoughts on all this?
So the way I see it is, like, this season, even like going back to like before pre-shutdown, obviously, we've been one of the few teams to actually hang with Milwaukee pretty well, and that's due to a multitude of factors, our wing depth and how we have a group of players that can match up well against Giannis. I thought that showed at some points, but Giannis is just going to take over the game every night. That showed, especially last night. Especially with we'll get to that later with the refs. We don't need to talk about that yet. But I liked what I saw in spots, but there were obviously a few things that were frustrating to watch. We can talk about like Tatum and his shooting performance or lack thereof. I'm not worried because it's been obviously 4 months off, and this has been. I'm going to talk about. I'm going to focus on Tatum here for a sec. It's been 4 months since he's had some real time to play. And you can't really expect him to find that sort of – it's not really fair for him to get back to that level he was playing at before after 2 scrimmages where he played 20 minutes or less and didn't even play one of those scrimmages and just like throw him back on the court and expect to get the same player as he was in February. Maybe that wasn't fair of us to expect that. Maybe he's got to like pump the brakes on that a little bit. And as far as the rest of the team goes, like essentially, that I look at that box at the final score of 119 and 112, and I don't think that really represents the game as a whole. Because at one point we started the game down 17-2, and we fought our way back like we had the previous 2 matchups against Milwaukee, like right away. This time we didn't wait till late in the game. We took a few leads, but gave them back within a few minutes. But we hung in there, and then it got really close at the end. But then a few bad calls that we'll talk about kind of stretched the lead out bigger than it really was on the court. But ultimately, I was pleased for what was the first game back after 4 months, and we just happened to play the best team in the world with the most unsubbable player in the world in Giannis.
Yeah, my big takeaway, I'm going to touch on the Tatum part. Tatum had 5 points. That's just unexcusable. He played awful. That might be the worst game I've seen from Tatum in the 3 years he's been in the league. That was awful. The part where you're saying where it's kind of like we shouldn't have expected that from him. Jason Tatum's an all-star, so I need to see him be playing at an all-star level all the time. Like Giannis, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, they came out last night. They played good. I know, Harden's kind of in like the MVP race or whatever, so he, you could say he's kind of like a superstar. But Westbrook isn't really a superstar. He had a good game. Same thing. Just looking around the league too. Rudy Gobert, he had a decent game. Same thing with Donovan Mitchell. The Jazz, they played good, so why can't Tatum do it? I guess it was just an off night. It came on a bad time to have it, obviously against one of the best teams in the league. But this game just proved to me that the Celtics can beat this team and will beat this team. This team we're gonna see them in the conference finals, and we will beat them. Mark my word, because the formula's there. The Celtics know what to do, and they did it. They just had a couple things go wrong, and I quickly want to touch on those. The first thing that went wrong right from the tip is Kemba Walker. He was on minute restriction. They said he could play anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. Ended up playing 19 minutes. He had 16 points and 5 for 9 shooting, but it was just bad rotations. And I feel like I don't want to blame it on Stevens, but at the same time, it's his fault. He played 19 minutes in the first 3 quarters and didn't show at all in the fourth. I don't think he had a minute in the fourth. But I don't know, Reid, how you feel about that, but I feel like if Kemba isn't on minutes restriction or he has an extra 5 minutes, I think we're talking about a whole different ballgame.
Well, like coming into the game, like Stevens was adamant saying like he's not going a second over 20 minutes per game, and I can't understand that. Like, yes, these games are starting to count, but like they're not scrimmages obviously, but they're still the purpose is still to keep ramping these guys up. Like they're obviously not all 100% ready to play at that level 100%. So I do get it on that perspective for Stevens. I think he's thinking about the long con, and that is preserving Kemba for as long as possible because he's going to be needed down the stretch for these maybe month and a half, 2 months that the Celtics keep playing, hopefully longer. But going back to Tatum, I do want to say, because you said this was the worst game you've ever seen from him. Statistically, I went to some digging. November 11th, he shot 1 for 18, finished with 5 points as well. And obviously, this was early in the season before he really found his footing. And there was games where it was typical Tatum inconsistency. His biggest issue his second season was his inconsistency. We thought it was gonna be more of that. Next stretch of games after that, 24 points on 45% shooting, 23 on 46% shooting, 26 on 50%, and then 30 on 50%. So he's shown that he can quickly shake these performances off in the past. He's done in the past, and maybe this is totally irrelevant now because that was months ago. That was back in November. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's also his, I don't want to call it work ethic because it's the NBA is just constantly in a flow. But that's just his ability to bounce back more than anything else. I think. Maybe he'll have games like this down the road. Hopefully not, especially as we get more and more desperate to kind of stretch that lead out between us and Miami for the 3 and 4 seed. But not to harp on it too much. I do think he did play good defensively last night. Came away with 7 boards, but he also grabbed 2 steals and a block, which was it's in years past, maybe even earlier this season. He would have, if he's struggling to shoot, put the ball in the hoop or anything, he'll just shut down. He'll sulk, he'll complain to the refs and not get back on defense. But it was good to see him kind of maintain the level on the opposite side of the floor because at least he was able to make an impact there somehow. But I do expect a strong bounce back game tomorrow on Sunday because, first of all, you're not playing against the defensive player of the year to be Giannis. You're going from him to Carmelo Anthony in Portland, and I think that's a pretty steady drop-off. So I think it's a good chance for him to bounce back, get that, put this game behind him, have a nice game tomorrow, put up a 20-plus game, have ease Celtics fans' tensions a little bit, and we can all just take a step back and relax and assess the situation again.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the good players do. They have a bad outing, they come back in the next one, they don't let it affect them. So, I mean, hopefully this just happened once, and this is the last time it happened. Like I said, it sucked it happened in the first seeding game against the best team, but, it could be worse. This could have been his Game 7 performance against Milwaukee, So, I'm thankful it happened, but, and it doesn't really matter. And, we kind of move on with it, and maybe he'll bounce back. But another big point that happened was Brown was in foul trouble basically the entire game. I think he picked up his 4th foul in the second quarter or something like that. And by the third quarter, he picked up 5. And he got benched immediately as soon as he picked up that 5th one. And he was kind of passive-aggressive the whole 4th quarter. You can kind of see it. People are saying that he didn't really have a good game. He had a decent game. But like I said, those foul trouble really killed him. If he drives to the basket and gets a charge, he's done. So, I mean, you didn't really see him driving that much. And even on defense, too, you kind of saw him playing a little bit passive on it. I thought that really hurt them a lot. And, we were talking about it before we started recording. The Bucks were without Bledsoe and who was the other one? They were all
Pat Connaughton.
Yeah. They were out their 2 guys. I mean, the Celtics are almost out without their 3 guys. Brown, foul trouble, Kemba Walker, minutes restriction, and Tatum was basically non-existent. So, if you want to point at that and say, Milwaukee didn't have their 2 best players, I mean, the Boston almost didn't have 3 of their top 3 guys. So, I don't know. The whole Brown situation is kind of interesting. And real quick, and we can move off Tatum because I don't want to harp on this too much.
Yeah.
Those 5 points that he had, I mean, technically it was only 3 points.
Yeah.
Giannis got him, 2? So I want to mention that because people see 5 points but it's no, he really only had 3. And for Brown, like I said, he was in foul trouble. And, I feel like it was on the refs too a little bit for that foul trouble because he did have a weird charge call. I think it was a charge in the first quarter. He drove to the basket. And I think Giannis or somebody was sliding in. He got called for a charge, which was not a charge, I didn't think. And then we saw the same play with Marcus Smart, and they bailed out Giannis. So, I mean, that was kind of annoying.
I think that, now that I have time to look at it, I looked at it at the replay after they consider the possibility of a block. I did kind of see it Giannis was already in the air when Smart stepped in. He was just outside the restricted area I saw, but it was going to be a block regardless. He just wasn't set that split second. Giannis just beat him to it.
Right, but also Brown was, Giannis was sliding on Brown, and Brown got called for the charge. So if you're gonna call it one way, call it the same way. You know what I mean?
Right.
That was my point. Whether it was a charge or not, Brown got charged. Brown got called with the charge, so call it on Giannis too. Don't just call it on him. I thought it was a bailout. I'll be honest. I thought it was.
Surprisingly, Brown did lead the team in minutes yesterday with 34.
Yeah.
He sat for a longer. Well, not. He didn't really sit. They kept him in. But there was a chunk where he sat longer than maybe he should have. At the end of the third, going into the fourth, but you could tell his offense was it was actually needed. I actually didn't walk away thinking he struggled. I thought he did really well. He ended with 22. Kyle can hop on if he wants. 3-point, shooting from three with stuff. He was like 3 for 10, so you could see that was missing. But I thought he shot with confidence, which was needed. Like his offense was necessary since Tatum was non-existent, and Kemba was obviously on the bench. Marcus Smart was a huge help with Brown on the offensive end. Same with even Brad Wanamaker I put up there with 14. My stance on him from last week to this week has changed. Yeah. And it didn't take much for me to change.
You that.
I thought I was actually really pleased with what he did on the floor. I thought he was reliable. He had a nice quick hands on defense and a nice fast break dunk, which was nice to see. So that was his third career NBA dunk is what I saw in his career.
It should have been an and one too. Another blow.
Maybe.
I mean, he got not. I mean, my eyes. I thought it was a foul. He went up for the dunk and got pushed, after winning the dunk. And there was a couple of calls that Milwaukee got. Like a perfect prime example of it was Brad. I think it was Brad Wanamaker got called because was it on the foot of Giannis? Oh no, I'm sorry. It was Giannis took a shot. He faded away, and they said that Brad hit his elbow. The replay clearly showed Brad didn't touch his elbow at all. And then I remember Scal saying, "Oh well, are they saying on the leg?" But then they call it on the elbow, and Giannis extended that leg out, and then I think he ended up getting called for that. Yeah. And there were just a lot of weird calls that happened, and I even saw on Instagram. I always butcher his last name, so I'm sorry, but the Mark Dabida, I don't know how to say it. I always butcher it, but he's the Celtics reporter for the team reporter, and he said that he was told that hostile act call with Giannis when he hit Tyson like the groin area. They said that it could not be called for a foul.
Right.
No, I'm sorry. It could be called for a foul. But Stevens said in his post-game interview, I think, that he was told it could not be called. So we have two contradicting answers that aren't matching up, They went back and reviewed it, and they said they were looking for a hostile act, which I've never heard ever watching basketball. I don't know if you've ever heard that, a hostile act. I mean, I've heard it maybe if they're talking about flagrants, but it's in their thing of, is that hostile? Is that something that he did intentionally? I've never heard it on a common foul, and they weren't reviewing it for a flagrant. Yeah. And then they come back out and say they couldn't give it a foul, and then afterwards they say they could, but they didn't. And then the ref said that he was in his defensive stance, and I didn't think he was. It kind of looked like he kind of moved that arm down Tyson's leg and hit him in the groin area. And that would have been his sixth foul. He would have been gone. So, again, I think there was another bailout. And I don't want to blame this on the refs, because you can't, like the refs just called it, whatever. But they didn't help either. There's a lot of calls that went against the Celtics, and there's a lot of calls that also went against the Bucks, but there are more crucial ones that went against the Celtics in the end.
Yeah, like it's a loophole to protect your stars. Like that's all the NBA is. That's all they're looking for, the refs. I've never heard what a hostile act was. Like the stoppage in time. Like I don't know if that was because they saw Tice was down, or if what the call was immediately, like why they stopped play. Because
it never do that though. That's
what I'm saying. Like they didn't stop because it was a foul. Like that wasn't the whistle. So I'll go back and look at that later. But I don't know. Like that's what. Why does your mind just go to foul? Like that is a foul on anyone else. Why is I see a play like that, I don't think, oh, hostile act. No, I think foul. Like what?
Yeah, I've never heard of a hostile act. I've heard of them saying hostile and referring to it if it's a flagrant, but they never mentioned anything about a foul. But then said they were reviewing if it was a hostile act. So now let's say hypothetically it comes back as a hostile act. What is that ruled as? You can't. It's not like, okay, Giannis gets his first hostile act of the game. So I don't understand where the review was coming in with that. Like, it's either a foul or it's not. There's no, it was a hostile act, or no, it wasn't. That's where I got confused. I didn't get that.
I guess that means I can just go around town whacking people in the nuts and get away with it, because I think that's the new rule of thumb now. It'll just be considered a hostile act. I won't get arrested for it or anything.
I mean, I want to pull up this.
Yeah. Even Mike Breen and Mark Jackson, Stan Van Gundy, Jeff Van Gundy said that they have no idea what that was. Like they were so adamant on it being a foul or a flagrant. Like that's what they were all convinced. They were just laughed at how ridiculous it was that it wasn't even called. Like that's not.
It's not right. It was a bad call.
It was purposely done. Like there's no way around it. Like that, you can't convince me otherwise. That's just the league trying to protect its stars on the first night back on shutdown. Like that's.
So, this is from that Mark. I'm sorry, I always butcher your last name. My bad. But it was an interview conducted by Jeff Zilligat from US Today with crew chief James Cappers following tonight's Boston Celtics and Milwaukee Bucks game. So the question was, why was the whistle blown to stop play when Giannis Antetokounmpo made contact with Daniel Tice? Capper said because in the official's opinion, there was a possible hostile act that occurred on the play. So right there, I've never heard an official stop play because of a hostile act. I've heard them stop play because of a foul, or if it's an extremely bad injury like the Gordon Hayward injury or the Kemba Walker one when he in the beginning of the year when he hurt his neck running into somebody. Okay, I mean, what's your take on that? I've never heard them stop because of a hostile act.
No.
Okay.
That was just them like that was purposely done. You can't convince me otherwise. Like what?
So then the question. So then Jeff asks him, James, you go to the scores table. Can you explain to me what you saw on the review that led to your decision? Capper says, I went to review it and noticed that the normal defensive stance by Giannis, his hands touched the belt line of Tice. Then he says it was not in the groin area and therefore was no illegal act of the play. It was not in the groin area? What do you mean it was not in the groin area? He was holding his groin. His groin was hurting. Like, the replay showed that Giannis's hand hit his groin. So that was my first red flag. It was like, it hit his groin.
Pulled him in.
So then the last question Jeff asked is just for clarification on that situation. Why can't you review a foul on Giannis in that situation? Capper says hostile act review does not allow for. Hostile act review does allow for a foul. Had I seen a foul and the contact been more than an accident, there would have been a foul on the play, but that did not occur. Okay, I have never seen in the NBA somebody hit somebody, whether it's light or very hard, and somebody, if it's light and someone flops. I've never seen somebody push somebody in the modern NBA game and let them get away with it. I've never seen that. I mean, we see it all the time. Back in the 90s, fine. But today, I've never seen that. It's always like you'll be in the post and you shove them a little bit and it's a foul. Always.
Yeah, I went to the Celtics Bucks again. I went to it was Game 3 last year in the Bucks Celtics series, and that was when there was a ridiculous amount of calls called in the Celtics. And there was one play, I think Bledsoe had the ball, and Jaylen Brown was guarding him, and he literally just put his hand, his left hand on his fingertips, on Bledsoe's back or something, not even on his back, he was just he was face to face guarding, and he put maybe on his left arm or something, and the ref he couldn't have blown the whistle faster, and put his hand up. It was insane how many calls, but just that. That just shows these teams the Bucks, the Lakers, the ones that have LeBron and Giannis. These guys they're getting every advantage they get, and there are certain players who are at that level, and Giannis is obviously one of them. And the Celtics don't have that yet, or maybe will not get that. I don't know if Tatum. Hopefully, he can get to that status, but he's gonna turn away a lot of fans if he gets to there because it makes watching players like Giannis a lot less enjoyable. I already don't like James Harden, but he gets away with that a lot. LeBron, obviously. It just doesn't make for a good game. And it just proves why the NBA it's so fixed. I've tried to veer away from that just because it's my favorite sport, and I just because how pure it is, or at least was now. But it's so fixed. It's terrible to watch at times, but I keep going back, and I keep getting invested, and it ultimately lets me down. Every time.
I want to add before we wrap up this little quote thing. Mark wrote in his caption, crew chief James Capper said a personal foul could not be called during the review process because it was not deemed necessary. What? Meanwhile, Brad Stevens said after the game that he was told the contrary, that a personal foul could not be called during the review process of a hostile act. So during the game, they told Coach Stevens that it could not be called. And then afterwards, they came out and said it could be, but they didn't see anything. There's too many. Already that original post that has the interview is already red flags everywhere, and that caption just puts more up. Like it didn't. I don't understand. I mean, I don't care that the Celtics lost. I'm not trying to get up here. Because I wrote on Bleacher Report, Bleacher Report had this funny caption. It's like, "Oh, Giannis was unstoppable tonight," and I wrote, "Yeah, so were the refs." And I thought it was kind of something funny. And people were like, "Oh, you're a salty Celtics fan. They lost." I'm not mad they lost. I'm just mad about how they lost because they had this game. They literally had it. They clawed their way back. They were right there, and then the refs kind of just came in and calls like that. That you can't tell me whether you're a Bucks, Celtics, Lakers, or just a neutral fan in this situation that does not bring up any red flags. And if that foul went against the Celtics, I'd be sitting here saying, yeah, we got away with that. That's ridiculous. Stuff like that, it just makes it not enjoyable, like we said.
We don't get we don't get those. Like we're always on the not the quote victim of those calls, for lack of a better term. Like we don't get those bailouts. Like we often we get screwed out of plays a lot, which stinks. And then it's why good teams stay good and teams like the Celtics stay within the tier that they are. And hopefully that changes soon. But I don't know, not too much to take. Well, there's a whole lot to take away, but not too much to invest in, as it's still just game 1 of 8 in these seeding games, and the playoffs come around sooner than later, because we're not we're going to be a whole 82 again, even though it's been a whole off season. Now we're only playing 8 quick games, and then the stakes get higher real quick.
I also do want to add it about this whole ref situation. Tice got called on I believe it was a goaltend on Giannis went up for a layup. Tice came up and blocked him. It was a really good block, and they called him for a goaltend. No, they called him for a foul. That's what it was. I think it was a foul.
He was I think he had 4 for the third quarter.
Yeah, I think he got called for goaltending too, but I think it was a legit goaltending. Yeah. And then Tice got called for a foul, which was ridiculous. That was a clean block. And then there was another play where, what was the play? Did Giannis drop? No. Somebody on the Celtics drove. I don't remember who. I'm sorry. I don't remember who. Somebody on the Celtics drove, went up for a layup, and the ball was on the rim, and Giannis jumped up and grabbed it off the rim.
I think
it should have been an offensive goaltend, and it should have been. I remember Mike Gorman saying on the telecast, he said that goaltend is 2 points. So right now the Celtics should have been up by 2, or they should have tied it. It was something like that.
Yeah, it was.
They missed 2 points.
Pulled it down for a rebound like that. That was blatant. And then I think it was Wes Matthews came down the other end and shot a 3. So that's a 5-point swing right there.
That's what it was. Yeah. He came down and hit a 3, and that 3 wouldn't have happened because. I think it was Tatum that did, because I think Tatum started talking to the ref and saying that was a goaltend, and then they didn't get back in transition, and then the 3 got let, which is the Celtics' fault. You can't do that. But then at the same time, can you fault them? That was a blown call, and that was not it's their first blown call. They blew so many after that.
Let's turn away from the negatives and go back to the positives. I thought I was really pleased with Gordon Hayward last night. I thought he was someone that didn't get enough focus. Throughout the season, he's been seen as the team's X factor, as he's been rehabbing from his injury 3 years ago. But working off that rocky, inconsistent, just downright poor season last year, and he's worked his way back to not quite the Utah player he is, but I think he's found a new role, a new play style as a team's facilitator, and that was apparent last night. Came away 17, 9, and 6, I think it was, something along those lines. But that third, fourth quarter, he was shooting the ball with confidence. The offense was running through him at times when Brown wasn't falling, Kemba was off the court, Tatum was. Ugh. But that was really good to see. I think that's not getting talked about enough. If he can just play like that, even that might have even been too much to ask for. If the Celtics big 3 quote unquote was if they're playing right, yeah, Brown, Tatum, and Kemba. If they're all on the court, playing their game, obviously Hayward's numbers aren't going to look as high. But if you just ask him to facilitate like he did last night, which he did very well, he had 4 turnovers though, which was, you got to shake off the kinks somehow. So that didn't really bother me. But I was really pleased with what he did. I thought he ran the floor very well. His court vision was very good. So I'm happy with that. I think that's going to be a big piece moving forward, especially before he inevitably leaves come September-ish when his child's due date is. But in the meantime, that was good to see. happy with that. We're content with that, even though we lost. Not too much more to harp on, I think.
Yeah. I want to add a quick couple points. Gordon Hayward, highly underrated performance. He played great. I loved his performance. Like you said, 17, 9 to 6. He was just something that the Celtics needed. It was like a little bright spot for the Celtics. I mean, everyone's been saying, "Oh, trade him," and this is why I said you cannot trade Gordon Hayward because he's the guy that can come in and get you 17 points when Tatum is having an off night and Brown and Kemba, for whatever reason, are doing whatever. So Gordon Hayward was awesome. I loved what he did, and people need to be talking about that because he was a difference maker in this game. He doesn't have that kind of game, and Celtics lose by 10 or 15. So he played good, especially in the second half, and even the first half too. He had a very underrated first half. I think he had 10 points heading into the half, so that was very underrated. He's just overall an underrated player on the Celtics team. He's very good. As for Marcus Smart too, I want to touch on this. You guys were saying in the last episode I talked about. He was kind of like a Kevin Garnett. And when I say that, I don't mean Marcus Smart's going to be an MVP, first ballot Hall of Famer, all these records broken, just a really good player. But what I mean is that he's the heart and soul of this team. Everything that happens starts with him. He can get a quick little turnover, a quick little steal, kick it out to the fast break, and they get a dunk at the other end. That started with Marcus Smart getting the steal. And we saw this every time last night. Giannis would come on the court, and who was on him? It was either in the first half, it was Marcus Smart, and then it switched to Brown and Hayward. And Marcus Smart showed those guys, like, look, you got to get up on him. And that's when they started to slow him down a little bit. I've said this numerous times on many different podcasts. I've said you cannot stop a good player. Good players, dominant players like LeBron's, Kobe's, Giannis's, you can't stop them, but you can certainly limit them. And that's what Marcus Smart was doing. And Marcus Smart's small compared to Giannis. You kidding me? I mean, that height difference and the length-wise is just ridiculous. But Smart limited him. He got up in him. He was, bumping him. Exactly what Kevin Garnett would do. So, I've said this before and I'll say it once again. Marcus Smart is this KG to this team. KG was the heart and soul of that 08 team. Marcus Smart is heart and soul of this, new era of Celtics basketball. So, I was really happy to see that because I think if he really steps up, he'll be good. And, Marcus Smart, like I said, underrated player. Kind of like a Matthew Slater because, kind of a good leader in the locker room. So, Marcus Smart, he did good. And he had 23 points. That's something cool to see, too.
Yeah. Well,
so,
I put the game behind us, put the loss behind us, and look forward to tomorrow against the Blazers. I think it's a good bounce-back opportunity. Hopefully, Tatum comes back with his old haircut. Hopefully, he realizes that that's the big issue, and goes to the Jaylen Brown School for Haircuts, shaves the fro, and puts up 20 a night again.
Yeah, do what I did. Buzz cut it. Nice and easy.
Exactly.
What he usually goes with. So
thinks it looks good. We'll probably keep it, and hopefully that doesn't attribute to his struggles or add to any more future struggles.
I have a thought.
Yeah.
About Tatum. Do you think Tatum was struggling? And it'll be interesting, like you said, if he'll bounce back. But do you think he struggled because he's thinking too much of outside the bubble with his son and his family? Do you think that kind of affected him in his mind? Because like guys like Kemba Walker, he said, he just lives by himself. He's kind of single. He doesn't care if he's in the bubble or if he's at home. So do you think a guy like Tatum that's kind of hurting him a little bit? Especially with his kid being so young.
Level of starting all the players. I mean, I'm not. I think they all real. I think they're doing what they came to do, and that's like play basketball once again. I'm sure it's on everyone's mind. I mean, I can't really. I think it's just a struggle more than anything else.
So I just look at Gordon Hayward. He had a decent game, and I know he has a lot of kids, but his kids are also a little. Most of his kids are a little older than Tatum's son. So I was kind of wondering if that kind of affected with Tatum, and also, I mean, no, I don't mean to compare the relationships with them or kind of do it, but a father-son bonding relationship is a lot stronger kind of than someone like other families that have daughters with a father. I don't know. That's just a quick little thought I was thinking about, but it will be interesting if he bounces back.
Can't really speculate much on that, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like a quick little conspiracy theory, I guess you could call it, that I was kind of thinking about. But the Celtic next game they'll be playing on Sunday against the Trailblazers at tip-off is at 3:30. Definitely will be an interesting game, and I've said it once, I'll say it again. The Celtics will either beat the other team or they'll beat themselves. There's no in between. Last night, Milwaukee did not beat the Celtics. The Celtics beat the Celtics. It's confusing as it is. That's what happened.
I expect a game from Tatum. Hopefully Brown stays out of foul trouble. Hopefully Kemba's minutes are staggered maybe a little bit better. I doubt he'll play much in the fourth again, depending on what the score is. But maybe don't top heavy his minutes like they did in the first game. I think he played like 6 minutes or so in the first quarter alone. Maybe a little bit less than. Maybe that might be a little too high. But hopefully a little bit better, and hopefully he doesn't get taken out when he's in too big of a groove, because otherwise he could leave the Celtics offense vulnerable. They are playing the Blazers, which obviously like Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum. Nurkic is back. That'll be interesting to see how we match up against him and Whiteside back to back. But it'll be interesting. I can predict a much smoother game now that they have this one out of the way, and continue to get the win back under them. I don't have too much else to add. I don't know if you have one last tangent or anything.
My last tangent, the refs for this game. No, I know we talked about a lot about the refs, but I'm not trying to blame it on them. It's just the reality. That's like my last big thing I want to wrap up on.
Rearview mirror.
Put in the rearview mirror. Focus on the future, and this team will beat Milwaukee in the conference finals. Mark my word. August 1st, and what is it? 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, we're beating them in the playoffs. So that's my final words. Thanks for watching this segment of a reaction to the game last night. We'll make sure we do these, maybe once a week for all the games coming up. And make sure to check us out. New episodes usually come out around Wednesdays on the new episode. And give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. We greatly appreciate it. And thanks for watching.